You can't resist it, my dear. The first hunt is always the hardest, but it gets easier.
It was supposed to be an ordinary October night, the last week of the month, when the days seemed to get shorter and the shadows deeper. I was alone in my old family cabin, a place I hadn't visited in years. Something had been nagging at me to come back. Maybe it was the silence in my city apartment, or the lure of nostalgia. Or maybe it was something else, something darker, pulling me back here without me even realizing it. The cabin itself was nestled at the edge of dense woods, far from any main road. Growing up, I'd always been warned about these woods. My grandparents told stories about people going missing and strange sounds in the night, but those tales felt like nothing more than the stuff of childhood nightmares, designed to keep kids from wandering too far. I had laughed them off until tonight. As soon as I arrived, an uneasy feeling settled over me, like I was being watched. It was more than just paranoia. It was a weight pressing down on me, thick and suffocating. I tried to shake it off, chalking it up to the wind, but the feeling wouldn't go away, and as night fell, the cabin felt more like a cage than a haven. The power cut out just after midnight. I wasn't surprised. The wiring in the cabin was ancient, and outages were common. I lit a few candles, hoping they'd calm my nerves. Instead, their flickering shadows danced along the walls, turning every familiar corner into something sinister. Every creak of the wooden floors felt amplified. Every groan of the old beams seemed like a whisper from something lurking just out of sight. That's when I heard it, a low guttural noise, like an animal growling, coming from outside. I froze, every instinct telling me to stay still, to hold my breath. I listened, straining to hear over the pounding of my own heart. The sound was closer now, moving around the cabin, circling, as if it was searching for a way in. And then it stopped, replaced by a scratching sound against the door. I grabbed the only weapon I had, a rusted hunting knife from a drawer in the kitchen. I gripped it tightly, my knuckles white in the dim candlelight, my heart thundering in my chest. I kept my eyes fixed on the door, expecting it to burst open at any moment, but nothing happened. The scratching stopped, and silence fell over the cabin again. Then I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling around the cabin's outer walls. They were heavy, too heavy to be any animal I knew. Each step was a thud against the earth, sending vibrations through the floor. It wasn't until I heard the footsteps pause right beneath the window that I dared to move. I blew out the candle, plunging the room into darkness, and crept to the window, pressing myself against the wall. Slowly, I leaned forward, just enough to peer outside. The moonlight illuminated a figure, tall, gaunt, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. I stumbled back, heart racing, barely able to process what I had just seen. The figure hadn't moved, hadn't tried to break in or make any noise. It just watched. For minutes that felt like hours, it remained there, a silent silhouette with eyes that bore into me. Then, just as quietly as it had arrived, it turned and vanished into the woods. Relieved but still terrified, I locked every window, every door, every possible entry point. I knew it was pointless. Whatever that thing was, it hadn't needed an open door to get close before, and if it wanted in, I doubted a locked door would stop it. But I had to try something to keep the fear at bay. The silence didn't last. Around 3 a.m, I awoke to a loud, echoing knock on the cabin door. It wasn't a polite knock, but a slow, insistent pounding. I lay there paralyzed in my bed, each knock matching the beat of my heart. I didn't want to go to the door, didn't want to see whatever was on the other side, but I also knew that hiding wouldn't save me. I crept to the door, knife still in hand, and pressed my ear against it. There was no sound now, just the faint rustling of leaves outside. Gathering what little courage I had left, I flung the door open, knife raised, prepared to face whatever horror awaited me. Nothing. The porch was empty and the woods were still. I stepped outside, scanning the tree line, looking for any sign of movement. Then I noticed something on the porch, a small, crudely carved wooden figure shaped like a person with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. It hadn't been there before. I brought it inside against my better judgment, examining it under the dim candlelight. It was rough, almost as if it had been made in a hurry, but the detail in the face was unsettling. I could almost feel it staring back at me, mocking me. I threw it into the fireplace and watched it burn, the twisted smile melting away in the flames. That was when I heard whispering. It wasn't coming from outside, but from inside the cabin, surrounding me, filling the air with a sinister, unintelligible murmur. I spun around, searching for the source, but I was alone, or at least I appeared to be. The voices grew louder, overlapping, filling my ears until I could barely think. I ran to my car, fumbling for my keys, desperate to escape. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of there, not daring to look. But as I drove, something caught my eye in the rearview mirror, a figure sitting in the back seat, eyes glowing, twisted smile stretched across its face. In pure terror, I slammed on the brakes, but when I turned around, the seat was empty. I was alone. Or was I? Every shadow along the road seemed to shift and follow. Every sound felt like it was moving closer. Even as I sped away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was with me, lurking just beyond my sight. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away, back in the city, surrounded by lights and noise. Only then did I allow myself to breathe, to believe that maybe I'd escaped whatever haunted those woods. But that night, as I lay in bed, I saw it again. A small wooden figure sitting on my nightstand, grinning up at me. And as the whispering started again, louder this time, filling the room with chilling voices, voices I couldn't escape. No matter where I ran, no matter how far I went, it followed. The twisted face, the glowing eyes, they're always with me now, waiting in the dark. And every October, the whispers grow louder, pulling me back to the cabin. So if you're ever alone in the woods and hear a knock on your door, don't answer. And if you see a figure with hollow eyes and a twisted smile, turn away. Because once it finds you, once it marks you, it never lets go. I tried to go back to my normal life, tried to forget that cabin and the thing that found me there, but it wouldn't let me. The whispers became part of my everyday, faint at first, like a distant hum that I could almost ignore, but then they grew louder, clearer, calling my name. I would find that same carved wooden figure in random places, on my kitchen counter, on the seat of my car, once even in my closet. No matter how many times I destroyed it, it always returned, grinning up at me with that twisted smile. Then the nightmares began. Every night, I was back in the cabin, staring into the woods, knowing it was out there, watching me. In these dreams, I would hear the footsteps circling the cabin, the same heavy, deliberate thuds. I could feel it getting closer, pressing against the thin walls, reaching for me. Sometimes I'd wake up screaming, but even in the waking world, I could swear I heard the footsteps echoing in my apartment hallway.